Hello guys, Ancient Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco and welcome to my channel. As for today's video, we have another GPU comparison with the RX 7900 GRE and the RTX 4070 Super, which was one of the videos that you guys asked. So I decided to go and put the RX 7800 XT in the middle, since many people have this card and some people are actually kind of in between the RX 7900 GRE and the 7800 XT. So yeah, basically I decided to put these three cards. Instead of having the two, we have the 7800 XT, the 7900 GRE and the RTX 4070 Super. And if you like these kind of videos, you can also watch the video that I released previously of the RTX 4080 Super versus the RX 7900 XTX. And I believe most of you watching this video know that the RX 7900 GRE got unlocked recently, and mostly unlocked on the VRAM, which is where it is most dependent in some scenarios. Basically, this card has 80 compute units compared to the 60 compute units on the 7800 XT, but since it has more compute units, more or less with the same bandwidth, sometimes even less than the 7800 XT, the card is bandwidth starved in most scenarios, and it was actually limited to a maximum of 2300 MHz on the previous driver versions, and it was now unlocked. So basically you can get the card as high as 2600, 2700. Well, it depends on the luck of the draw that you have. Some cards have better binning, some cards have lower binning. Still, in this scenario, I'm still using only 2400 MHz, but with fast timings, thing that also matters. And I'm telling you this because I tested several games with 2300, which is basically the build that I had before, 2400, 2500 and 2600. But there's a catch. As soon as you go over a certain amount of VRAM frequency, you need higher core frequency, since the core controls the input output, I believe, as well. So you need higher core frequency to be able to achieve higher VRAM frequency. And when you do that, you are actually, since you are not undervolting anymore, you are actually raising the power that the core needs, hence reaching lower clocks on the same power limit. Because of course, if you need higher voltage inside the same power limit, the clocks need to be lower in order to fit inside that same power limit. I don't really know if I'm making myself clear, but that's basically it. You raise the VRAM frequency and you get more frequency, but at the same time you get lower frequency on the clocks, since of course you have the same power limit with higher voltage. So it's a trade-off, and from my tests, 2400 MHz with fast timings were more or less what most people could get, and it actually performs really close to 2600 MHz without fast timings and with a lower power limit, or in this case with lower clocks. And well, after this long intro, let's go to the pricing of these cards. And we start with the 7900 GRE at $549, the Pulse model. Then we have the 4070 Super at $599, which is the Asus Dual model, I believe. And then we have the 7800 XT, which costs around $499, usually a triple fan model as well, a decent model, let's call it that. As for the European prices, we're using Mind Factory Germany, and things are quite different there. As soon as we look at least to triple fan models, or models that aren't shitty, let's call them that, the 7900 GRE can be found at 563 euros, the 4070 Super can be found at 640 euros, and the 7800 XT can be found at 539 euros. So in this case, unlike US, the 7900 GRE is actually 100 euros less expensive than the 4070 Super, decent model versus decent model, while the 7800 XT usually is around 140 euros cheaper. So there's a difference there, because you, with 140 euros or even with 100 euros, you can get a better CPU, you can get more RAM, you can get an NVMe. Still, the price difference is not that big. It is there, but not that big. But do you know what's big? My today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor is GVG Mall, bringing you lots of software deals like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2019 or 2021 with a new Windows 11 design. And for all of these, you can use my SKG discount code for 30% off, getting a Windows 11 serial key for $22 and a Windows 10 one for only $15. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. So let's go to the benchmarks, and thanks AMD for sending me the RX 7900 GRE. Plague Tale Requiem is our first game on the list, being a game that really likes the strong GPUs in terms of physical units. Still, the RTX 4070 Super does a phenomenal job here at 1080p, delivering virtually the same performance as the RX 7900 GRE, while consuming 100 watts less. As the resolution goes up though, the RTX 4070 Super starts losing some ground as it has a narrower buzz width, now being only 7% faster than the RX 7800 XT. Difference that disappears at 4K, where the RX 7800 XT is now on par with the RTX 4070 Super and the RX 7900 GRE is 12% faster. Assassin's Creed Mirage is an excellent scenario for the RTX 4070 Super that does not only consume around 100 watts less, but also outperforms the RX 7900 GRE by 8%, which is a win-win situation here. At 1440p the AMD cards do get some ground, with the RX 7900 GRE being really close to the RTX 4070 Super, but at 4K, where I thought the AMD cards would catch up, well, we can see that the RX 7900 GRE is getting bandwidth starved, as it is basically on par with the RX 7800 XT, while it should, at this resolution, be faster than the RTX 4070 Super. Cyberpunk 2077 is known to be an NVIDIA tech demo, but taking off the ray tracing features, it actually performs very well on the RDNA 3 cards. At 1080p all cards are performing very well, with the RTX 4070 Super being only slightly slower than the RX 7900 GRE, something that changes a bit at 1440p, where the GRE is 9% faster, and it is also interesting to see the RX 7800 XT now matching the NVIDIA card as well. At 4K the GRE is now 10% faster than the RTX 4070 Super, and even the RX 7800 XT beats it by a small margin, but once again it consumes around 100 watts less than the AMD cards, so it's a trade-off, I guess. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is the first game where both AMD cards are faster, with even the RX 7800 XT being 12% faster and the 7900 GRE being a whopping 30% faster. At 1440p the AMD cards still dominate on this title, but that's quite understandable as AMD GPUs are known to run better with Call of Duty games. And at 4K the difference is bigger in terms of smoothness, as the NVIDIA card can drop as low as 37 FPS, while the RX 7900 GRE only dropped to 55, which is way better gameplay wise. Forza Horizon 5, like Assassin's Creed Mirage, is a game where AMD GPUs absolutely need smart access memory to perform well. As we go into 1440p, the RX 7900 GRE starts getting a bit more ground over the RTX 4070 Super, but nothing really relevant in terms of real gameplay scenarios. Something that does not change at 4K, where the GRE is not even that much faster than the RX 7800 XT. That is now on par with the RTX 4070 Super. And unlike Forza Horizon 5, Hogwarts Legacy loves raw power, and this is why we get the RX 7800 XT performing on par with the RTX 4070 Super. But if you look at it stock versus stock, the NVIDIA card is faster. But as soon as we let the AMD cards pull the power they want, we got a massive uplift of 17% with the RX 7800 XT and 24% with the RX 7900 GRE, which is insane by today's standards. At 1440p, both AMD cards are in fact faster, which is something not normal per se, with the RX 7900 GRE now being 22% faster than the RTX 4070 Super. And at 4K, the 7900 GRE is the only card able to deliver 60 average FPS in this scenario, which is something expected from a card that consumes more power and has more physical units. With Microsoft Flight Simulator, we're basically CPU bottlenecked at 1080p, a little less with the RX 7800 XT of course, but still slightly bottlenecked. At 1440p, where the bottleneck goes away, we start seeing the RTX 4070 Super pulling considerably ahead of the RX 7800 XT, being 11% faster while consuming less power. With the game taking advantage of the RX 7900 GRE that is now 14% faster than the RTX 4070 Super. At 4K, all cards can deliver over 60 average FPS here, but the GRE is just much superior, delivering 80 average FPS. And Alan Wake 2 is another game that has lots of NVIDIA's features, but that doesn't really mean that it runs poorly on AMD GPUs, au contraire. Here, even the RX 7800 XT is on par with the more expensive RTX 4080 Super, in this case 4070 Super, with the RX 7900 GRE being a bit ahead as well. As the resolution goes up, the RTX 4070 Super actually gains ground instead of losing it, now being faster than the RX 7800 XT and only 6% slower than the RX 7900 GRE. Something that does not really change at 4K, where the RX 7900 GRE is barely faster than the RTX 4070 Super, but it doesn't really matter as all cards are below the 50 average FPS mark here. Avatar is a really interesting scenario because it is one of the newer games where some form of ray tracing is always enabled, and you cannot disable it. And this is why the RTX 4070 Super is 16% faster here. At 1440p it is more or less the same, and while this game might be an outlier now, I believe that this is how the games will transition to RT, or ray tracing, and in this case scenario, the NVIDIA GPUs have the lead. Even at 4K, where the RX 7900 GRE tends to perform better, it still loses to the RTX 4070 Super, that consumes less power and delivers more FPS. Gladly, not everything is like Avatar and ray tracing is not a must yet, but it is interesting to note that even on a non-ray tracing title like Starfield, which is AMD sponsored by the way, the little RTX 4070 Super manages to deliver the same performance as the RX 7900 GRE, which is impressive if I must say. At 1440p I thought things would change, but they are more or less the same on the same brackets, as they were at 1080p. And even at 4K, the advantage the AMD cards usually have over the NVIDIA ones is minimal, and we can consider it null if we take in consideration power consumption. And almost the same applies in The Last of Us. Well, at least at 1080p, where we do have a CPU bottleneck, or so I thought. At 1440p, the RX 7900 GRE actually delivers virtually the same FPS as the RX 7800 XT. Showing a possible lack of bandwidth here, and at 4K it is basically the same, with all cards performing within the expected apart from the RX 7900 GRE. What an odd game for this card. Moving to a less odd title, we have God of War that will later get replaced by Hellblade 2 as soon as it comes out. Now we have the AMD cards performing considerably well, with even the RX 7800 XT being faster than the RTX 4070 Super by a little. At 1440p we see overall the same results, with the RX 7900 XT, 7900 GRE, being only 11% faster, and at 1440p ultra-wide the NVIDIA card finally surpasses the RX 7800 XT. But even the RX 7900 GRE is only slightly faster than its little brother, which once again might be due to a bandwidth starvation here. And finally, going to the rasterization averages, we see that even comparing against the RTX 4070 Super, the RX 7800 XT is not that much slower, always delivering at least 95% of its performance while costing considerably less in most regions. As for the RX 7900 GRE, well, it generally costs around what the RTX 4070 Super does, sometimes more, sometimes less depending on the model, but it is a bit faster across the board. Well, let's watch some ray tracing benchmarks.
We're not from here either. Stellantis locked us up here a year ago.
The first ray tracing benchmark, as always, is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, as it is the only game that I know that is fully ray traced. And in here we can see that even the little RTX 4070 Super, consuming 100 watts less, gets to blow away these two AMD cards, being at 1080p 37% faster than the RX 7800 XT and 21% faster than the RX 7900 GRE. At 1440p things get even worse, where the RTX 4070 Super is 24% faster than the RX 7900 GRE, We must give credit to AMD in terms of 1% lows though, as at 1080p and 1440p, even though the NVIDIA card delivers much higher averages, the 1% lows on the AMD cards are much better, especially at 1080p, and I could definitely notice the improved smoothness on the AMD side when testing these cards, which is something to look at, I guess. Although as we go to Cyberpunk 2077 the difference is just massive. At 1080p the RTX 4070 Super is 35% faster than the RX 7900 GRE and a whopping 62% faster than the RX 7800 XT. At 1440p the differences get even bigger, as with FSR and DLSS the NVIDIA card can deliver almost 90 average FPS, while the RX 7900 GRE stays below the 70 FPS mark, which is playable for sure, but still quite bad considering the card consumes quite more power than the RTX 4070 Super. Resident Evil 4 is another scenario though, as the game only uses a soft ray tracing implementation, but even here it is interesting to see the RTX 4070 Super being considerably faster than the RX 7800 XT, even in a game engine known to favor AMD GPUs. At 1440p the 7900 GRE is still the fastest GPU in terms of rasterization and performs more or less the same as the RTX 4070 Super in ray tracing. And finalizing with 1440p ultra-wide, well, we have a little surprise and the RX 7900 GRE is the fastest card overall once again, only by a little in ray tracing, but still faster. With Spider-Man Remastered we start with 1440p, as even at this resolution we're kind of a bit CPU bottlenecked, at this game's ray tracing implementation is CPU focused. Here we can see the same as we did with Resident Evil 4, where the RX 7900 GRE is slightly faster in raster and around the same in terms of ray tracing. Something that gets basically equal at 4K, where both the GRE and the 4070 Super are delivering the same results in rasterization, with the NVIDIA card delivering only 2 FPS more with ray tracing enabled. As soon as we move to Ratchet and Clank though, things change, with the RTX 4070 Super now being slower than the RX 7800 XT in raster, but 39% faster ray tracing wise, also 23% faster than the RX 7900 GRE. At 1440p the difference gets even bigger in terms of real-life scenarios, let's call it that, as the RTX 4070 Super delivers over 90 average FPS, while the RX 7900 GRE stays at 76, and the RX 7800 XT doesn't even reach the 70 average FPS mark, even though it performs the same with ray tracing off. Now let's see how these cards perform with upscaling.
Members of the Resistance, report to your nearest...
The final benchmarks are with upscalers, just in order to test how XeSS works on these cards as well. In Ratchet and Clank at 4K, we can immediately see that XeSS works quite well with the RTX 4070 Super, delivering more or less the same performance as the DLSS, actually having higher 1% low somehow. But on the AMD side, FSR performs considerably better. On the RX 7800 XT's case, for example, delivering 14% more performance than XeSS. Although with Spider-Man Remastered we do have a different scenario, with XeSS working considerably worse than FSR and the DLSS here, especially when looking at for example the RX 7900 GRE, that performed 23% better when using FSR versus XeSS, which delivered a really small uplift over the native resolution somehow. But well, overall we do get some interesting results, and it is what it is, I guess. Let's now go to the final thoughts for some final statements. And well guys, here we are now on the conclusion and final thoughts. Like on the 4080 Super versus the 7900 XTX, and like most things in life, it all comes to what you want or what you need. If we're talking about a card, a really small factor card that actually has good temps, a lower power draw and performs as it should, and it also features the DLSS, which for now, before FSR 3.1 that you can see on this video passing right now on the screen, before now actually is much better than FSR in terms of upscaling. The same card that has frame generation in way more titles. Then you go to the 4070 Super. Of course it is more expensive than the GRE by 50 or 100 bucks, let's say that, but at the same time, once again, it consumes more power, has the superior upscaler, and has frame generation in way more titles. If you want a card for productivity, workflow, then the RTX 4070 Super with the CUDA cores is the way to go, at least once again for now. As for the 7900 GRE, well, it is a card that has more VRAM, it has more raw power, and overall in rasterization it is faster, up to 10% faster than the 4070 Super. But at the same time, in terms of productivity, in terms of power draw and so on, of course, it will be, well, worse. And even if we go to the Pulse version that consumes around 290 watts maximum, well, the performance difference isn't much from what I've tested, because once again I had the Pulse version before and now I'm testing the Nitro, and I tested the results side by side and they weren't really, well, they weren't really much different. I actually retested all the results with the Nitro and I still have the Pulse results. I saw them once again side by side and the difference is like 5%. So 5% at 1080p, 5% at 4K. So the difference is not really big. And you can always, for example, install the V-BIOS from the Nitro edition on the Pulse card, and that will allow you for a higher power draw. And the Pulse edition actually is very good on the 7900 GRE because it has basically the same cooler as the Pure, but the Pulse on this card is black and the Pure is white. But going back to the topic, the GRE consumes more power, but at the same time it is a cheaper card and has 16GB VRAM alongside more raw power. Now we can think of two things in the future. We can think of ray tracing and we can think of raw power. If we go to the raw power way, or to the raw power route, we can say that the 7900 GRE will be a better card in the future, because once again it has more VRAM, which is always a good thing, and it has more raw power, thing that helps a lot in games like Microsoft Flight Simulator, Plague Tale, Requiem, and so on. In those games, the performance in the future, in those types of games, the performance will be better. But if we are looking at a future with ray tracing implemented in every single game, then even in the future, the RTX 4070 Super will be a better card, even if it only has 12GB, because once again, the ray tracing performance is better, we have upscalers, the upscaler is better, the frame generation, and so on. Which card would I get? At only 50 bucks more, I would definitely get the 4070 Super. The only downside is the 12GB, and if I really wanted the 16GB and more raw power, that's where I would get the 7900 GRE. Otherwise, the 4070 Super would be the way to go. And well guys, that's all for this video. Thank you a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think about the performance, about the future proof of both cards, or of the three cards if you want to, because I really want to know your opinion, because as I told you, ray tracing is going to be the future and games are slightly kind of shifting more and more to ray tracing. Games like, for example, Avatar, and more games will come out like that with kind of, well, let's say, kind of some kind of implementation of ray tracing always enabled, and in those scenarios, in terms of future proofing, the RTX 4000 series will be better compared to the RDNA 3 cards. But at the same time, games will still come with rasterization overall, and in those scenarios, the 7900 GRE will be able to brute force those games, since it has more compute units, and of course it has 16GB VRAM for the, well, high quality textures that are coming in the future. It's really hard, it's a really hard pick, I must tell you, really hard pick. So leave your comment in the comment section and let me know what you think about this hard pick, because like I'm telling you, it's a very hard pick and I want to know your opinion. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one, guys.